Hello and welcome to the Pybites Podcast, where we talk about Python, career, and mindset. We're your hosts. I'm Julian Sequeira.
And I am Bob Belderbos. If you're looking to improve your Python, your career, and learn the mindset for success, this is the podcast for you. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Pybites Podcast. In this episode, it's just me, Bob Belderbos, and I wanted to talk about essential components to include in your public Python project on GitHub. And this was a question asked in our community. If you're not there yet, please join on pybites.circle.so. A lot of really nice Pythonistas in there and a lot of good discussions on Python development and mindset. All right, let's dive straight into it. So one is, of course, your code, and it's best to package it. So usually I make a directory where I put all my modules. This is fundamental for anyone who looks at your project to quickly understand where everything is. Start with a well-organized code package. This means structuring your project's code into logical modules and packages. It's fundamental for everyone who looks at your project to quickly understand where everything is and how it works. And this will enhance the usability, maintainability of your project. 2, the README.md. The README really is your front door to your project, right? It's your visit card. It's where you describe what the project does, how to install it, how to use it, and any necessary setup instructions and examples. So again, if you want to showcase your project to the world, this file is crucial. It's the first thing that pops up when somebody visits your project on GitHub. So put really the effort into it to make that look great, both for potential contributors, but also if you want to showcase this on your portfolio. License. Highly recommended to include a license file. This is essential for open source software because it clarifies how others can legally use, modify, and share your code. A clear license promotes sharing and collaboration by removing legal obstacles. 4, the .gitignore file. A gitignore file helps keep your repository clean by preventing unnecessary or sensitive files from being uploaded to GitHub. We have an article on Pybites, how to handle environment variables. We recommend, as the libraries python.env and python decouple do, to have a local.env file. And you end up storing API keys there, which are sensitive. So it's really important that you include a gitignore file from the start so that .env files, for example, get automatically ignored. But you can also think about your virtual environment folder, which has a lot of files. You don't want to accidentally commit that to version control. There's a standard Python gitignore file. You can add it on GitHub with the creation of your project, but you can also just pull it in if you start locally. 5, a test folder. Maintaining a test directory is key to ensuring your project works as expected, right? So any good code has tests to show how the code works, but also as a regression suite that if you make changes to the software over time, that you have a guarantee that stuff doesn't break, right? And highly recommend using PyTest and then organize your code into a package like number 1, and then put your tests in a test directory. 6, the pyproject.toml. Before I would use a setup.py, but more recently, the norm seems to be pyproject.toml, and I like that format better. So use that file to centralize your project's build system and dependency requirements, embracing modern Python packaging standards. Additionally, I highly recommend using pre-commit to automate your linting and code checking, PEP8 violations. For that, for example, you can automatically run Flake 8. You can use isort to sort your imports, black or rough for code formatting. And instead of running these tools manually, pre-commit can do that automatically when you commit code. Now, that does a little bit of overhead because before committing, you might need to do some cleanup and manual checking and re-adding it to the staging area for commit. But, it all keeps your technical debt down. So the .precommit config.yaml is the config file for pre-commit, and I would definitely include that. So number 6, pyproject.toml and pre-commit config YAML. 7, requirements.txt and requirements.in. So in requirements.txt, you list all your project dependencies, right? So if somebody else checks out your project, they need to know what dependencies to install. This can also be set, by the way, in pyproject.toml, but adding a requirements.txt doesn't hurt to make this more explicit. And the requirements.in is when you use pip tools, which is a great tool. I will also link a video we did on YouTube below in the podcast description. And there you can set the requirements not pinned, so not with a version attached to it. And then you run pip compile, and it will make a nice requirements.txt with the pinned versions, but also how the requirements depend on each other, which is really nice. So it's important to document what libraries and dependencies are used and how they are used together. Now, when you use a package manager like Poetry, then it uses a log file, and that would be the equivalent. But yeah, using a project manager might also be overkill. So at least just add this file manually. 8, contributing.md. Contributing.md is crucial for guiding contributors through the process of participating in your project. So it should outline how to submit pull requests, the project's code of conduct, and the coding standards to follow. This encourages a smooth contribution process and helps build a community around your project. So a lot of open source actually lies into documenting the process, how we should collaborate, and contributing.md is great for that. 9, the .github folder. GitHub Actions is a great way of using continuous integration and deployment. So you can set up different YAML files to, for example, run your tests automatically, do checks or whatnot. And these processes or workflows live in the .github directory. But it doesn't stop there, because as per the last point where we spoke about contributions, you can also add issue templates and pull request templates into the .github folder. And then again, you streamline the process of contributions to your project. And number 10 is the docs folder. So you can set up a docs directory with comprehensive documentation, as we've seen with projects like SQL Model and Fast API. Identic, good documentation is invaluable, not just for the users, but also for new contributors who need to understand the deeper workings of your project. And you can use tools like Sphinx or MKDocs to create well-structured, easy to navigate documentation. So those are the 10 I would at least take care of when putting a Python project on GitHub for which I want to get contributions. So 1, organize your code into a package. 2, add a detailed README file. 3, add a license. 4, add a .gitignore file. 5, have tests and organize them in a test directory. 6, add a pyproject.toml and also a pre-commit configuration. 7, have your requirements listed in requirements.txt or the equivalent of using a package manager like Poetry. 8, have a contributing.md. Of course, this is only relevant if you want to receive contributions, but why not, right? 9, the .github folder with one or more workflows using GitHub Actions, for example, to automatically run your tests. And 10, have documentation organized in a docs folder. There are a couple of other files that can be useful. For example, if you want to run tests against multiple Python versions, you can use tox or nox. Let's just stick with tox, and then you can have a tox.ini file that configures how the tests are run. You can have a Makefile to automate common development tasks. So see that as a bunch of aliases that can do make run, make test, make whatever, and then it runs one or more commands below it. So it makes it easier for other developers to run things. For both things, I have a video, which I will link below. And lastly, you can have a manifest.in file for including necessarily non-code files in your package distribution, right? So these files contribute to making your project more robust. And these 3, and there might be more, but just sticking to the 80-20 here, but tox.ini, Makefile, manifest.in, those files contribute to making your project more robust and developer friendly. So that wraps up our essentials for setting up a public Python project on GitHub. I hope this answers the question well that was raised in our community. And incorporating these components will set a solid foundation for your project and foster an engaging open source community around your project. If you have any other files or practices that you tend to include, then of course reach out to us on Circle, pybites.circle.so, or send us an email, info@pybites, pybit.es. And that's it. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Hope you enjoyed, got something out of it, and we'll be back with a new episode very soon. Cheers. We hope you enjoyed this episode. To hear more from us, go to Pybites/friends. That is pybit.es/friends, and receive a free gift just for being a friend of the show.
And to join our thriving community of Python programmers, go to Pybites/community. That's pybit.es/community. We hope to see you there and catch you in the next episode.